اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. Distinguished our guests, lecturers, professionals, my dear brothers and sisters, this is our pleasure to welcome you all to our platform, Islamic Economics Association, Faculty of Islamic Studies of University of Kuwait, as we are trying to promote Sharia compliant modules, strategies, and theories globally, and we are trying to conduct lectures, workshops, trainings, and sessions which usually cover a wide range of areas in Islamic banking, finance, and insurance, capital market, equity market, and also some other specific topics, including sukuk, retail, corporate market, and other products, and also practical contemporary issues. A part of that today's lecture on Islamic wealth management, the pursuit of positive some solutions, will be conducted, inshallah, by our prominent global figure in Islamic economics and finance, Dr. Mohammad Farooq. So Dr. Mohammad Farooq is an associate professor of economics and finance with the Department of Accounting and Finance, Gulf University, Bahrain. He received his PhD in economics from University of Tennessee, Knoxville, United States of America in 1988. Dr. Farooq was a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of California. He has taught at several US universities for 20 years and then in Bahrain for 13 years. His teaching and research cover both conventional and Islamic economics and finance. He also has scholarly contributions in the field of Islamic law and history. Inspired by Islam, Dr. Farooq consistently writes from a self-critical, common ground seeking, and bridge building, humanity-oriented perspective. So this is our pleasure and honor to have Dr. Mohammad Farooq today to conduct this lecture on Islamic wealth management. So please welcome Dr. Farooq.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, Prof. Wa alaikum assalam.
Let me share my screen first. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. I am thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving me this opportunity to be able to participate in this webinar arranged by Kuwait Islamic Economics Association, hosted by Dr. Mahuddin Mahi, all the participants today, and anybody who would be watching this program in future. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before anything else, let me put the disclaimer that whatever I speak here, it represents me and nobody else. The topic that we are covering today is not often covered in the Islamic finance context. Mostly we talk about Islamic banking. We talk about sometimes Islamic social finance. We do talk about capital market, but Islamic wealth management also is part of overall Islamic finance industry. And I do want to address that today, but in the context of a thought based on positive sum solutions. And I will elaborate on that throughout this presentation, inshallah. Before getting to the topic, I want to point out that there are certain background resources that I have published, which would be important going beyond this presentation today, because in, let's say, a 30-40 minute presentation, only so much can be covered. And some of the things I might be saying, the issue may come up that on what basis do I say this? Well, these are some of the things that, as the background, if you are more interested, then inshallah, it would help you understand where I am coming from, because I have a framework of thought when I'm dealing with these topics, not in an isolated manner, but actually part of a framework of thought. And just today's host, Dr. Mahi, mentioned that the purpose of the forum, the association's forum, is basically to explore, discuss, disseminate about Sharia compliance. And as you know, Sharia compliance means legal aspects, and mostly legal aspects. And there are certain issues related to this Islamic law and Islamic jurisprudence that I have certain framework to approach this, which I say that much of it, what we have today, is legalistic. And we need to go toward a value-oriented approach to Islamic law and jurisprudence. That part I cannot explain here. So this is a book. It has been published in 2001. And to understand what do I mean by legalism and what do I mean by a transformation toward value-oriented Islamic law and jurisprudence, for that, the book would be the ideal place to start. Also, because we talk about Sharia compliance, my research has shown that there are a lot of misgivings and misunderstanding about when we use the term Sharia. So I explored this topic, and some of you might find the content of this paper somewhat shocking, but I invite you to read it, because when I talk about Sharia compliance, it comes from some of these research that I have done, which I would not be able to cover in this presentation today. And the third one that I mentioned, this is a recently published paper, actually within last 1 month or so, Islam compliance beyond Sharia compliance toward a broader socioeconomic transformation. Once again, why do we need to move beyond Sharia compliance and think about Islam compliance? Is there any gap between Islam and Sharia? Again, these are somewhat intriguing topics, but once again, I would not be able to get into that. You might get a feel for that from the presentation today, but for a much broader understanding of where I'm coming from, these three background resources would be relevant and important. Now, the theme today, as part of this Islamic finance industry, as I have already mentioned, that Islamic wealth management has emerged as an important niche, and it is growing actually. And this presentation is based on a previously published paper also titled the same way, Islamic Wealth Management and the Pursuit of Positive Sum Solutions. I have provided the link of this if you want to read and download that. It looks at the conventional wealth generation and management with its systematic zero-sum tendency or bias. This idea of zero-sum requires some explanation. Most of you might be familiar with it. If anybody is not, I will be elaborating on that. Then it discusses Islamic perspective on wealth generation and management. Also, whether Islamic wealth management or IWM has any distinctiveness in trying to avoid the zero-sum bias or tendency. And then some ideas to turn pursuit of wealth into positive sum bias. In Islam, pursuit of wealth is legitimate, it is halal. In this dunya, we are supposed to seek the barakah from Allah to the best of our ability without being enamored with this world. But otherwise, with proper intention, we can pursue wealth to our maximum capacity. But such pursuit, in my view, should be with a positive sum bias. Now, when we talk about wealth management, integrated financial services that incorporate financial planning as well as portfolio management, this is part of the conventional comprehensive advisory and management of a client's wealth. All these are involved there. But it presupposes that people have wealth. So it is geared not toward a smaller segment of overall population, but also with a special bias toward those with high net worth. If I have some wealth or surplus and I want to invest, for most of us as ordinary people, we may have to either individually manage our portfolio, which is unlikely unless it is a large portfolio. Most likely we will be turning to our retirement funds or outside our retirement fund, mutual funds. But other than that, the people who have a lot of wealth and either they do not have the time or the expertise and they would like it to be professionally managed, they turn to wealth management industry for not only advisory, but managing the fund based on certain contracts. So that brings us to the discussion about this sum. The paper talks about, and this presentation is about positive sum, but before that, we need to understand zero-sum perspective. So when we talk about zero-sum perspective or thinking, it's basically based on the game theory that presupposes zero-sum games. And in a zero-sum game, one person's gain has to be another person's loss. There's no option that both parties can actually win. Or it doesn't have to be exactly the same proportion of win, but here the idea is that the loss of one party means that another party's gain or vice versa. And in this regard, if we have a bias that because either I win or my competition wins, basically I have to make an effort so that I win. And in this thinking, it's okay that other person or other party has lost, the counterparty has lost, because that's what the game is about. So when we talk about game theory, it is essentially a mathematical representation of a situation in which if the total gains of the participants are added up and the total losses are subtracted, basically sum is zero. So that's why one person's gain is another person's loss. So it is a situation in which one person or group or entity can win something only by causing another person or group to lose it. So this basically is an environment where we are desensitized about the counterparty's loss. It's okay in this context that other party has to lose, because if I am to win, then there's only one way to do it, and basically other party has to lose. So I don't care about other party's loss. Now, in terms of zero-sum thinking, other than the game theory concept, it has also been explored in the context of a psychological construct, how a person's subjective interpretation of a situation affects their decision. So that's the context of this zero-sum perspective. Some of you might be familiar with derivatives, such as options. Options futures are considered to be zero-sum transaction. If you look at the diagram there, basically there is an option buyer, an option seller, and there is some broker commission, let's say. It would not be free. So basically the $360 paid by option buyer goes toward option seller of $340 plus the $20 broker's commission. So one party's loss is another party's gain. There is no net benefit to the society, and it is just a transfer of wealth from one party to another. Now, sport, any kind of sport, especially if it is a competitive game such as cricket or team sports like basketball or soccer, a single winner basically emerges from that game, and that would be also a zero-sum game. Gambling, poker, these are also zero-sum games because one party's gain would basically mean that other party's loss. Now, stock market is not necessarily zero-sum because I can buy a stock at $20, sell it at $40, earn some profit, and then somebody else buys that stock and they can sell it another profit. So it is not necessary that one person's gain has to come from another person's loss. So conceptually, we need to understand how the zero-sum framework works and then try to understand how can we avoid basically the non-sum type of games, particularly to turn it into positive pursuits. Now, in my view, in the overall context of the wealth generation and wealth management, there is a systemic zero-sum bias. And when I say bias, it's not 100% that one party completely gains and other party completely loses, but there is a tendency that actually affects this type of behavior. Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz has pointed out in his book, The Price of Inequality, the top 1% of Americans gained 93% of the additional income created in the country in 2010 as compared with 2009. Remember that in 2007, 2008, there was a global financial crisis, and we came out of that in a couple of years. And during the recovery period, the gain was such that 93% of that gain created went to the top 1%. Now, this is not 100% zero to zero, but 93% to 7% for the rest of the world. Well, to me, that's a kind of bias. Similar pattern from the pandemic crisis. There are a lot of rich people, they became richer. There are more millionaires and billionaires in USA, for example. The pool of those below poverty has also grown. And these are issues of concern as well. So understanding the millionaires as well as the ultra high net worth parties is a key aspect of understanding the dynamics of concentration of wealth and its implications. Now, when it comes to wealth management, from the conventional side, they don't care as to how the wealthy people, the rich people have become rich and wealthy. They're just simply interested in the management side of the wealth. But if we put the label Islamic in front of something, it cannot be simply, well, I don't worry about what kind of wealth you have, how did you gain, and what do you want to do. I just want to get you better return. As soon as you put the Islamic label and also call Sharia compliant, it provokes some questions, some queries that how is it different than the other way, the conventional way it is done. So when we talk about, for example, economic development and the overall growth of the economy, business cycle, the recessions, the recovery, and so on, sometimes it does indicate to us that even though this is not a pure zero-sum pursuit or zero-sum game, but the pattern shows that basically there is an ingrained bias in this regard. So if you look at in 2021, that the share of total income wealth, if you look at income, basically income is for the rich people about 52%, and then the middle category 39.5%, and people who are generally poor, the bottom 50%. Bottom 50% has 8.5% of the overall income, the middle 40%, 39.5%, and the top 10%, 52%. But look at the wealth. Bottom 50% has only 2% of wealth, middle 40%, 22%, and the top 10% has 76% of wealth. So before we try to understand the wealth management aspect, which professionally or industry-wise, most of us have some idea, but when we talk about Islamic wealth management, then there are certain things we need to understand and recognize. Now, this zero-sum bias that we talk about, normally the way a society deals with, including in the West, that, well, let the wealthy people become wealthy, super wealthy, we will tax them and redistribute their income. But as you can see from the most recent experience, that really has not reversed the zero-sum bias. And more importantly, what we see is that there are actually rich people who are top philanthropists. Some of them are giving up most of their wealth. but that does not really address the structural or systemic bias that exists in society. So if somebody becomes super rich and give up billions for charitable purpose, for philanthropic purpose, that's great. These people are great. But how does an economy, a society, has such a structural bias that leads to this kind of concentration? That is something also important for us to recognize and understand. So, if we can somehow view conventional wealth management as seeking zero sum solutions, because to them, for them to win, it's okay if other people lose, then basically we need to then explore, is it really different in case of Islamic wealth management? When a hedge fund, when a wealth fund, sovereign fund, they actually try to come up with their strategy, policy, approach, do they think about what kind of impact that might have on others, especially in a harmful way? So conventionally, this does not matter. But if we put the Islamic brand, the Islamic label on it, is it really different? That is something we should be interested in. So the idea behind the zero-sum thinking and to change it to win-win, well, zero-sum argument comes out of that basically I win or you lose. That's basically the two outcomes. So the only way I can win is basically make you, the counterparty, lose. The non-zero sum game is basically based on finding a middle ground where we all can share in the win. It doesn't have to be equal win. It can be win-win where all of us feel that we are better off. We all are better off from the transaction. So this idea of non-zero sum game is the basis for thinking about the win-win or positive sum solutions. Most of our problems today that we face is coming out of our zero-sum thinking. Even in political context, think about Israeli-Palestinian conflict. On both sides, there are people, at least some people, who think in a zero-sum way. So either we exist or you exist. My future basically depends on winning you or destroying you or eliminating you. That's a zero-sum thinking. There are many other conflicts that we are aware of in history and in our time also comes from zero-sum thinking. But even in terms of businesses, well, I have to increase my profit. And if I have to increase my profit by polluting, that I won't let people know that I'm polluting, or I would not be doing anything about it, or finding ways to go around it, well, that's also zero-sum thinking. Because we are thinking that somehow my profit has to be at the expense of other people. So somehow in our mind, somehow inculcating this notion that it is possible, not like a team sport where there is only one winner. In social or economic or business context, there is the possibility of win-win scenario. And can we think about that? How do we achieve that, including in the area of wealth management? Interestingly, this idea of win-win, well, you can learn from individuals like Stephen Covey, who's one of the best sellers in the world, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he articulated one of those habits is to think win-win. Win-win is a belief in the third alternative. It's not your way or my way. It is a better way, a higher way. Now, this is something you can learn from people like him and from their experience. Or we can also learn about this from our root in Islam. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was probably, if not the greatest, one of the great leaders actually in the whole human history. Indeed, according to his influence on history, as you know that in 100 most influential people in the world, he was placed number one because of his influence. But we can also learn that win-win from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As you know that there was a time before Prophet became a prophet. He was already known as Al-Amin in his community, and there was an incident where Kaaba needed a renovation, and Hajar Aswad, that black stone, had to be moved. And once it was moved, the issue became at the completion of the renovation, who is going to bring the Hajar Aswad back and put it in the place. As you know, Arab society was very much divisive, and very easily it could engage in bloody conflicts. And somehow everybody felt that they should be the privileged group, group of people or tribe who should be having this opportunity or honor to place the black stone in the proper place. And every tribe at that time basically was claiming that we should be doing that. Well, it could easily turn into a zero-sum scenario. But Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as part of the historical incident that we know, that the community agreed on him as the arbiter, that let him decide for us the solution to this. And we find a profoundly relevant example of win-win approach, where he asked people to bring a sheet of a kind of sheet of cloth, and then basically put the stone on that, and all the contending parties basically join in different corners to carry the stone to the place. Well, this is an example. Unfortunately, even though we repeat this example, but the lesson from this as a win-win thinking, we have not developed it appropriately or adequately. Or when we think about win-win, we turn to Stephen Covey, not to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has shown the way long time ago. Now, as far as the Islamic wealth management industry is concerned, one of the most relevant sources of information is in the Islamic Finance and Wealth Management Report 2021. And this is something providing a comprehensive basically picture of what is happening with the this particular niche industry of Islamic finance. Now, there is, in terms of wealth management, you have the creation of wealth that comes through employment, entrepreneurship, inheritance, gift. Accumulation comes through investment, capital gain. Because of the Sharia issues where we don't live in a perfect world, so there has to be some kind of allowance for non-pure or impure income, but then that has to be purified. So takaful and other instruments for that. To protect wealth, you have estate planning, the inheritance, wasiya, hiba, waqf. There are donations. There are different areas, and distribution could be in the form of zakah, infaq, sadaqah, and so on. Now, in terms of the common areas, we have the conventional investment options that mostly we are familiar with: bonds, conventional bank account savings, derivatives, foreign exchange, futures and forwards, options, swaps. From Islamic investment side, we have the investment accounts in Islamic banks or sukuks. And then there are some common areas that could be identified that are acceptable from both conventional and Islamic side. Now, as I mentioned right in the beginning, the concept of Sharia compliance, and this needs to be deconstructed, and some of the references I have already given where you need to read those to understand my perspective on this. But Sharia compliance today basically means avoiding the major prohibitions. So in some way we can call it a prohibition-driven approach, where primarily we're trying to avoid riba, which we should, we must, darar, excessive risk and uncertainty, maisir, gambling, speculation, and of course, anything that we deal with, it should be halal as well. So there should not be any dealing of any financial or other investment or business related to pork, intoxicant, pornography, or any other thing that would be deemed haram. So today, what we mean by Sharia compliance is that we are legalistically distinctive in regard to these prohibitions. But in terms of value creation, in terms of the benefit to the society, in terms of having that impact where we all can win rather than the wealth actually accumulates to a few, well, that part from Islamic viewpoint, we need to be conscious about. Now, at this point, I would like to again draw your attention to a few more resources that I have written and published. One of them I have already mentioned about Islam compliance. Another thing that many Muslims have very little understanding about, we think about riba. Riba is haram. We must avoid it. One of the most stern prohibition carrying as much as the Allah and Prophet declaring war against those who do not give up. So it's a serious matter. But as serious as it is, in contemporary time, you might find that if we care about zulm, which is also connected with riba, then profit might be as much a source of zulm as riba, if not more. And also, rent-seeking behavior today is one of the biggest sources of transfer of wealth and causing also injustice and exploitation in the society. So beyond riba, if we want to understand the modern complex economy and the corporate structure, then I invite you to also learn more about the rent-seeking behavior, and this particular paper addresses that. And the other paper, Exploitation, Profit, and Riba Interest Reductionism. As Muslims, we are supposed to avoid haram, and riba is, as I mentioned, that one of the key prohibitions. However, in modern context, if we care about exploitation, injustice, then once again, we also need to understand that it could be contributed as much by profit-seeking enterprise. So how do I make that argument, or why do I make this argument, which I cannot explain in this presentation, but those of you who are interested, I invite you to explore, read these papers and explore these ideas. Now, Islamic wealth management as Sharia compliant, except avoiding those prohibitions. They broadly share the features, the underlying principles, as well as advantages and limitations of conventional wealth management. So this is something not only in terms of features, but there is something even more concerned to something more to be concerned with, is that while we talk about riba being haram, interest being haram, equating riba and interest, which I call the riba interest equation, but somehow we can halalize dependence on interest-based benchmark. Now, again, that's the topic that needs to be explored further, that how can we say that interest is haram, riba is haram, but we have to depend on interest-based, that is somehow halal. This could be some of the reasons why a lot of people among Muslims have some credibility issue with this industry, because they have difficulty understanding the rationale given for halalizing the reliance or dependence on interest-based benchmarks. A fundamental principle and a disconnect that I would like to draw your attention to in Surah Al-Hashr, number 59, in verse 7, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that let not wealth circulate among a few wealthy among you. Now, basically here, qaila yakuna dulatan baina agniya minkum, that let the wealth not circulate among a rich few of your society or the economy. Unfortunately, even though this is in Quran, it is not important to us. We don't care about it as much. This is not a haram halal issue. This is something somehow, well, it happens because Allah gives somebody more and some other people, Allah don't, so what can we do? Well, there are certain things that we need to understand, that these are things that happen because not Allah Ta'ala is making it happening, but rather there are structural issues in our economy and society that needs to be understood and addressed. And also a fundamental value that somehow we have not embraced as fundamental to our understanding of economy, business, finance, and so on. The idea is shared prosperity, which is also related to win-win approach and thinking, not in the zero-sum approach, but win-win. The prosperity should be shared. And examples are there. You look at when Prophet Muhammad said that he is not a believer, whose stomach is filled while the neighbor to his side goes hungry. Well, we all need to eat. We all need to share in the blessings of God. It may not be in the same proportion, but this idea of shared prosperity, again, is not consistent with zero-sum thinking, zero-sum bias, but it is actually thinking in terms of the transactions that we have. It should lead to a positive outcome. And that also should apply to wealth management if it is Islamic wealth management. So when we talk about Islamic business and competition, it's a fundamentally different value. Now, when we say fundamentally different value, think about competition is one of the key things about modern society. And in pursuing our economic activities, business activities, one of the things Islam draws our attention to is that we should not be involved in cons or accumulation leading to highly skewed concentration. Now, this is the responsibility of the entire society, but rich and wealthy from Islamic viewpoint should be particularly concerned because they are going to have greater accountability. So if I'm rich, then I need to be proactively thinking that how can I utilize my wealth? How can I gain my wealth in such a way so that I would be able to stand on the day of judgment before Allah and say that I actually followed that dictum from the Quran that let not wealth circulate among a few, and I contributed toward a system, a structure, a framework that actually enhances the implication of that particular verse. Now, today, many of the economists are considering concentration of wealth to be a fundamental factor that is not just causing business cycle, but also it is contributing more or spreading and exacerbating more poverty and deprivation. In this regard, again, two resources, both of these are my publications. Some of these are co-authored. Hoarding versus circulation of wealth from the perspective of Maqasid al-Sharia, and the other one, inequality, concentration of wealth, and the ownership structure of Islamic banks, some pertinent issues. If somehow these topics like concentration of wealth, inequality, that Surah Al-Hashr, verse number 7 interests you, then again, these readings should be relevant. Now, the special responsibility of the rich and privileged who actually are tied with the wealth management industry because they want professionals to manage their wealth. What is important in this context is that we can pursue to amass wealth, but all of these in our value creation, wealth creation, and also disbursement of wealth, utilization of wealth, we need to subject that pursuit to Islamic principles. Without that, we can be wealthy, we can have all kinds of Sharia compliant activities, but it may not be actually consistent with what we can view as positive sum solutions. So the primary responsibility in this regard is wealthy and powerful. The enduring solution, however, does not lie in after concentration adjustments of modification, so that the rich people gave some zakah, they gave some sadaqah, they redistributed some wealth voluntarily or as part of taxes. But we also need to understand that we need to identify what causes the systematic bias in an economy or in a framework and how that can be addressed or changed. Now, this idea about positive sum, is it realistic or is it just an utopian thinking? Well, it all depends, because generally speaking, if there is demand, there will be supply. Right now, the demand is for, well, the rich people among the Muslims, they want to have their money managed or wealth managed in a Sharia compliant manner. And the only thing they care about that as long as riba, garar, and maisir, those and other haram things are avoided, then who cares about what kind of impact their wealth can have or is having on others. But that's where the positive sum mentality comes in, because if we really care from Islamic viewpoint, then there is no other way to think, because any kind of zero-sum approach or profit return generated from zero-sum framework, and particularly if it is at the expense of others where there are harm inflicted on others, then yes, we are getting a lot of return. Yes, we are getting a lot of wealth, but that is going to be working against us on the day of judgment. So to wrap up toward the end, what are some of the things that we need? Number one, if we are working in the wealth management industry, then it should not be simply, well, according to the guideline, how much wealth management services we can sell. That's salesmanship. Instead, we need to become trustees, guardian of the wealth, where we guide the clients as to how things can be managed better, providing them the solutions that here is your money that can be invested here with no impact on environment or harmful impact on environment, or here you can invest where actually it can cause some good to the society and the economy and the environment. Here is an investment that can allow you to get good wealth, good return. Here is an alternative where actually if you invest, then you are going to get some return, but also it is going to contribute toward achieving some SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So instead of just trying to sell the service for the sake of return, try it in such a way that as if that you are the guardian or trustee of these funds and guiding the clients to something better in the win-win framework. The next thing is that that when we talk about high net worth or ultra high net worth clients, they also have a role to play. If I go to a wealth management service, including Islamic wealth management service, that, hey, here is my $10 million or $100 million or whatever, and I want you to manage so that you're Sharia compliant, and I want to get competitive return or good return or whatever agreeable. Now, as a client, if I tell my managers, tell that I want it to be invested in such a way, managed in such a way, number one, it should not cause harm to others. Number two, I would like to see that it has an impact that would be consistent with what is known as the win-win pursuit or positive sum pursuit. If the clients come and seek this kind of solutions to the wealth management industry, I strongly believe that they would respond. But right now, if we simply go to them for a return in a Sharia compliant framework, then technically speaking, yes, that's Islamic wealth management, but not necessarily that would be a win-win or positive sum solution. In this regard, also briefly, I would like to draw your attention to 5 things. I cannot elaborate on that in this presentation, but if we really care about economy, business, finance, wealth from Islamic perspective, then these things are fundamentally important. Real economy. Often we talk about that Islamic finance is based on real economy because actually it is based on asset-based or asset-backed transactions. But as I have also published in this area, that much of it is not quite up to the mark. When we understand what real economy is all about and how its dynamics functions, then you might change the idea. And again, I would be talking about some resources that you can refer to. Job creation. One of the most important aspects for shared prosperity is that all the investments that we do, is it having some impact of job creation or actually job destruction? Again, we need to look at it from the job creation perspective. Spreading asset and capital ownership. If I'm a Muslim and I have wealth Allah has blessed me with, for which I would be held accountable on the day of judgment more stringently, I have a responsibility to see that wealth, asset, capital actually spread more broadly in the society. And that also requires some ideas. In some of my works, I have pointed that out. Also, emphasis on going public. There are a lot of major businesses in the Muslim world, they are private equity. By going public, they can allow access to the broader population to share in their wealth as it is generated. And I have talked about already shared prosperity. To me, when we talk about an Islamic economy, I'm talking about a shared sustainable prosperity subject to Islamic parameters. No fancy definition, no roundabout way to explain what Islamic economy is about. If an economy shows the symptom or the indications of shared sustainable prosperity and they are subject to Islamic parameters, that's an Islamic economy. Also, as I have mentioned that this real economy needs to be understood, this is another paper, Conceptualization of the Real Economy and Islamic Finance, Transformation Beyond the Asset-Linked Rhetoric. I invite you to read this because this would give you an idea that how substantive is the claim that Islamic finance is broadly linked with real economy. You might change your mind quite a bit. The bottom line is that if the high net worth clients are interested in Islamic wealth management, they need to recognize that currently the market does not offer much opportunity for fulfilling the Quran's anti-cons expectations. However, once they themselves take it seriously, they have the economic and political leverage to create options that would better meet the Islamic expectations while pursuing wealth accumulation and addressing wealth management. These are the things also part of the bottom line. If we want to achieve all this in the Muslim world, we need broad-based, well-spread wealth generation. This also requires good governance, shared sustainable prosperity, sustainable human-centered development, pro-poor, pro-disadvantageous bias, and as I have mentioned before, Islam compliance beyond Sharia compliance. Now, ask yourself these questions, big questions. Do I have or does my organization have zero-sum thinking and attitude? If there is, then maybe we can do something about it. But first, let's try to answer these questions. Do I or my organization understand zero-sum versus non-zero or positive-sum pursuits? And then, how can I or my organization think and internalize the value and principle of win-win? Here are some resources if you want to understand more about zero-sum, how the current world is actually a zero-sum game, and also what would be non-zero. There are several works that I have recommended. These are highly recommended for enhancing and broadening our understanding. I would like to end it with one example because these are practical issues. In a positive sum thinking, our mentality has to be such that we are proactively thinking that how can we have a win-win solutions? How can my decision, my policy, my stance can contribute toward win-win solutions? One of the stories that I come across with which I would like to end today, there was a Muslim businessman and a buyer came to buy an item from his store. But the owner told the buyer that I have that item, but can you go to the other store and see if you can buy it from that particular vendor or merchant? So the buyer was a little bit intrigued and somewhat annoyed, but he went to the other store and bought it from that particular vendor. So when he was coming back, he passed by the first businessman and asked him that, why did you send me to the other store? You had the item. So the Muslim businessman said that, well, yes, I did have that item, but I have sold a lot of items today. But that particular vendor, a Jewish vendor or a non-Muslim vendor, I have seen that he has not sold anything today. So I send it to his store so that he can also earn some living. I think the conclusion of that story is obvious. You can see the example of what win-win thinking can lead us to, rather than when businesses are trying to thrive or prosper at the expense of each other. Somehow in a destructive competition where my gain basically means that, well, you may lose and I don't care. Well, thank you for listening to this presentation. I would love to hear about your candid and reflective feedback. Let me know at your opportunity. I have given the email address. Did this presentation enhance your knowledge and understanding, and in what way? Did it in any way impact on the way you think about pertinent issues? And once again, thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Walaikum Assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Prof, for this wonderful and excellent presentation. And I believe it covered already a detailed understanding of Islamic wealth management and what is the pursuit of positive some solutions, including the directions and also principles. So thank you very much, Prof, for your time and this effort.
Somehow I am not getting any sound. Why?
Can you hear me, Prof, now? I think others can hear as well. My voice is clear, I guess.
Can you hear me, Dr. Maya?
Yeah, yes, I can hear
But
you.
why can't I hear you? Okay, try now.
Okay, Prof.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much. So thank you very much, Prof, for this wonderful session. And we believe that our participants benefited a lot from this detailed session on Islamic wealth management. And Alhamdulillah, we have a clear pursuit of positive sum solutions. And I believe all of you have received the PowerPoints, as we already sent the link of PowerPoints in our this chat group. So, and for your information, this lecture is also recorded in our official channel in YouTube. And if you also visit our website, we are going to post this lecture, including the link and slides in our website. So distinguished brothers and sisters, now we open the floor for questions and answers. If you have any questions or comments or additional points, you are welcome to share with us. Brother Saeed Masood, you say, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. May you share us the link to have the slides for this beautiful program? Yes, Brother Saeed. We already sent the link in chat group. Again, we are going to send again. Inshallah, Asma, inshallah, ستضع رابط المادة العلمية في الدردشة inshallah الآن. So if there are any questions or additional points you would like to share, you may raise your hand or you may write in the question box. I can see two brothers raise their hand. I'm not sure what is the name. It shows the Galaxy J1 Mini Prime. So please welcome if you have any question. Galaxy J1. I open already. I switch on microphone for you. Brother Saeed, we have already sent again the link of our Google Drives, which consist the slides of today's lecture. So you may download it from the link. Yes, Rabit al-Mad al-Ilmiya, and also the survey. Galaxy J1, are you with us? I switch on microphone for you already. I think it's not available. Any other questions? This is a good opportunity to ask our prominent scholar if you would like to know any other additional things or you would like to share your point, your ideas, please welcome.
Maybe the message is clear.
Yeah, Prof. Actually, it's true, Prof. When you explain, mashallah, yani, it's very clear to understand. And the most important thing is you brought up with some important notes from the Sharia, from Islam. Sometimes we don't, think of that. So this is very important to remind Islamic scholars and students, researchers. So from your research, we believe that the researchers in this field benefit from your articles and your, I can see your journals, your articles, and also your lectures. And yes, very clear. Bashiro Diop, okay, thank you very much, Brother Bashir. Any more comment? So, Prof, what is your message for new like researchers or students who are studying or pursuing knowledge in Islamic finance,
Well,
especially the advanced students? What is your message for them?
one of the things that I would like to emphasize is that sometimes our thinking become too much boxed.
Yeah,
We need to think out of the box. Now, out of the box does not mean going against Islam or going against Sharia or something, but sometimes what we think is the right way of thinking or right thinking or the right thought, we need to sometimes challenge ourselves. And that's why when I say I write or speak from self-critical perspective, I examine my own ideas continuously so that I don't develop something as a dogma. A lot of things that the terminology that we use, including frequently used term Sharia compliance.
yeah.
I invite you to look at and read the paper, give it a serious reading. Why
Islamic.
I'm saying talking about Islam compliance.
Yes, Prof.
And once you read it, let me know if actually it contributed to broadening your horizon of thinking. And particularly all those references that I have given selectively, they enhance the discourse about Islamic economy, Islamic finance, and contemporary issues in somewhat unorthodox way. So if you are too much enamored by orthodox thinking, you need to be careful because some of these readings could raise your blood pressure.
Hmm.
So you need to be open-minded. But I think if you examine your own thought in a self-critical manner, always be open to explore things from both Islamic perspective and the life experience. I think that we can do better as individuals in whatever role we play in this life, and the world could be a better place. Right now, the solutions that we are offering, you can tell me if the world is attracted or convinced by Islamic finance being something that they all want because this is something better. Either
Yeah.
we have not been able to present to them a value proposition that this is something good for them, other than the religious argument that well, you can go to heaven by adopting
Yes.
this. But in terms of overall value proposition, Is it really the world looks at something that they are borrowing things from Japan, they're borrowing things from here, they're borrowing things from there, but even the conventional banks, when they come and offer these services are targeted toward Muslims. They don't
Yeah.
think that this is something that they are convinced that this is something better. So they would like to open in New York, and they would like to open it to Frankfurt or Paris or London to their native customers. Well, I think you know the answer.
Yes. That's true, bro. That's true. Thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, Prof, like some other students, example, we can see uh, they are students of in like not Sharia, but in from another specialization. But at the end, they would like to learn more about Islamic economics and finance. And we can see in some countries in Asia, some of them become like Sharia advisory board members and Sharia advisory expert and like this. So what do you think actually? Is it work? Does it work in this way, like who don't have actually deep knowledge in Sharia or Islam, both in Sunnah, prophetic practices, and revelation, Quran. But reading the books and articles, do you think this is much more enough for them to be like Sharia expert?
Yeah, well, this is a discussion that may require additional time, but generally speaking, this very term, Sharia scholars, I think it begs some question. The people that we call Sharia scholars who deserve our respect, do they really understand the modern complex world, the way things can be made relevant, functional, and dynamic from Islamic perspective? Unfortunately, most of our Sharia scholars, as we know, they only know how to apply it at the transactional level.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
at the
Yeah.
institutional level, at the economy level, at the global level, do they really understand and appreciate the complexities and dynamics? And without understanding that, is fiat money halal or haram? We don't know. Is fractional reserve system haram or halal? We don't know. So our focus is only on the transactional side. Even institutionally speaking, we have adopted the same commercial banking framework as the West has done, which has proven time and again that they contribute toward a lot of concentration of wealth and also a lot of problems in the business cycle. The last financial crisis, that actually started from the financial sector and so on. And we have adopted that. We could have, for example, adopted a credit union framework where the depositors are also owners of the
Yes.
institution. It could spread well. You could get lower rate on your financing. You could get better return on your investment and deposit. But somehow we don't think about these issues. So there are a lot of things require fresh thinking. And as I said, this transaction focused, or what some people have called micro juristic
Micro
approach,
juristic. Yeah.
is something that unfortunately that's what we have turned Sharia into. So when I have referred to some of these works, some of you, if you are inclined to read, as I said, that read with an open mind and be ready to be exposed to some out of box thinking.
Yes, thank you, Prof. You can see Dr. Rashad Zaidan to share something. Dr. Rashad, please
Uh,
welcome.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Welcome.
there is a question that is there a legal codification for investing Islamic charitable funds? Well, this legal codification, I don't know what exactly meant. Are you talking about some standards like AOFI has Sharia standards? That part I don't have an answer to. I don't know whether AOFI has come up with any standard in this regard. But again, I think that this kind of area is also transaction focused queries, because just to give you an example, that in terms of charitable fund, what do we want to do with charitable fund? We want to help people who need charities. Well, I'm sure that there are people who can use charities, and we have resources that we can organize to alleviate some of these. But let us understand that our zakat, which is fard, and also we actually have a lot of people who give zakat, but we cannot eliminate or reduce poverty. Why? Because the way we utilize these resources is not a matter of codification. It's not a matter of standardization, but it's a matter of how do we utilize our resources. The way we give zakah, I have to give zakah, I give it to an organization or individuals I know, and my responsibility is fulfilled. Beyond that, I don't care where did my zakat money go, how did it create an impact, did it have any impact in a sustainable way, did it actually bring a person in under poverty, below poverty to above poverty? We don't care. And that way we can give centuries zakah and charitable, but it would not be impactful. One of the things that I mentioned, I mean, it is in the slide, but I forgot to mention, our approach has to be solution oriented, result oriented, and benchmark. Even our zakah brings 100 people a year out of poverty. We need to go back and see that were we able to bring 100 people out of poverty in 1 year's utilization of resources? If we do it in a targeted way, I don't care. It may take a century, but we can eliminate poverty. But if we keep doing the way things are doing, we will be giving zakah, and poverty will be there, and the people who need charity, and they would be there. The purpose of these things is not to just feed people who are hungry. The purpose of Allah's guidance, in my understanding, is that we should be sensitized in such a way that in every possible way we make an effort that nobody needs to go hungry. They don't need to come and ask for food, so that we solve the problem of food. So charity, I believe, is actually a side issue. If we have proper development framework where we create jobs, and as I mentioned, good governance actually takes care of people's need, provide the framework where an economic development occurs, everybody participates and benefits, and those who can't, well, there is zakah, there is sadaqah, there are other means to benefit from, but the main solutions are not from charitable resources.
Charitable resources. Right.
Yeah, it has to be by developing the economy. The West did not develop economically using charitable resources. This is something that needs to be recognized. You don't need zakah or sadaqah the way China has developed, or Japan has developed, or Norway has developed. Let's think about it. We can also, it's not a mystery. It is not a mystery how development occurs. But somehow, when it comes to Islam, we are focused on charity. Charity is very important. Charity has to be there so that nobody who needs, the needs are unfulfilled. But the main solution has to come from solving the problem of income generating opportunities, either through jobs or through entrepreneurship, by business development, and so on. Unfortunately, that's not the way we think.
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for this, for answering the questions of Brother Said. Yeah, I hope Brother Said got the answer, and we also got many ideas. Thank you. Prof, we would like to hear now from Dr. Rashad Zaidan. Please, Dr. Rashad Zaidan. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I am really very thankful for the professor for this valuable lecture. I'm a pharmacist, but I'm now studying high level of economy, Islamic economy. I will appreciate if he can advise me. I'm just now looking after the medical insurance from an Islamic view. if there is any resource he can advise me to look after, I will appreciate his help. Thank you very much for you, brother in Kuwait, and I am very appreciated all efforts. Thank you again.
For these matters, it would be better to personally contact me so that I can understand the need and guide back.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Rashad, I think you have already Prof email, so you can email to Prof. So inshallah, Prof will reply to you, inshallah. Thank you very much. And there are some other questions you can see. I mean, the Sharia is still okay, thank you very much. Any more questions, please, or any comment? We are almost at the end of the session. Any more question? We are ready to respond, inshallah. Prof, someone, Abdul Rahim, may you tell us some references of Islamic wealth management? Any references, Prof? Would you like to
I did not quite. What is the question? How Waqf can play a role in IWM? These are actually more specific questions. Waqf has been very important in our history, and Waqf still can play in wealth management. But actually, this is not a wealth management issue. We have a very fundamental problem with the way we think about Waqf. In the Muslim world, the Waqf is primarily used for helping the orphans, or a masjid, or something that is very micro level. Waqf or endowment, as it is used in the West, just look at institutions like Harvard University and their endowment fund. Their endowment fund, I think about 35 or 40 billion dollars. And see that what kind of impact they have by utilizing Waqf in terms of education, research, health. And the way we think about Waqf actually is we need to talk about it. But yes, it can be part of wealth management, because the people who are wealthy, definitely from Islamic viewpoint, they should think about how they can better leverage their wealth through Waqf for this world and also in the world hereafter. Can zakat be given as free of cost financing? That should be like Qad Hassan. These are some fiqh related issues, and I try to avoid fiqh related issues for a variety of reasons. But I will tell my feeling about it. There are two schools of thinking about in this regard. One school is that when it comes to zakah, it must be disbursed in such a way that the ownership is fully vested in the receiver. So then you don't have any control over it. But life has shown that in most cases, the desired impact would not be there if you completely transfer the resource to the receiver. And the reason is that most people are short-term oriented. If they receive certain fund today, instead of helping themselves long-term, they might to get the medicine to save themselves today, or something for the immediate need fulfillment. If you have something that actually is more based on the notion that the resources are recyclable, and also you have to return, there are evidences that it actually produces better result. Now, this is something from fiqh viewpoint. If you think that, well, the resource has to be transferred permanently to the receiver, then you know that there are some limitations to what the question has raised. But I believe that these are some of the problems of the way we have fiqh-based approach that does not take into consideration the impact, the outcome, how we can produce better result. How can actually we help people better? Somehow, the way we think about fiqh does not cover those areas. And that's one of the reasons why value-oriented Islamic law and jurisprudence, that's something I invite you to read.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof. Yeah, I think
I think there is another question here.
Yes, yes.
Where
Does it
is
mean
the
that
question?
IMOA is only confined for rich people or people with money? So how transfer of wealth take place in IWM?
How come I'm not being able to see the question? Is it in the chat?
Yeah, yeah, in chat group, Prof.
Okay, for rich people or people with money. So how transfer of wealth take place in, for the first part, when we say that it's confined for rich people or people with money, as I have explained, that wealth management industry is particularly geared toward wealthy people, the people who have wealth. And often they deal with high net worth people. For smaller investors or with a small wealth, usually they turn to mutual funds or their personal investment. The other part is that, so how transfer up will take place in IWM? I am not sure that I understand that question. Before I answer, I need to understand it better. If you would like to contact me and explain to me the question a little bit more, I can try to answer. But now IWM understand Islamic wealth management, but when you say how transfer of wealth take place in IWM, if I understand the question correctly, the way the world operates today, the way the economy and the business and the financial world operates, except for the Sharia compliance part where you avoid certain things haram, there is no difference between conventional and Islamic wealth management. So as far as the transfer of wealth, it can happen exactly the same way it happens in the conventional wealth. For example, an Islamic wealth management fund may be investing in a, let's say, a digital fund or cryptocurrency fund or something. Well, they would be benefiting from this and they would become richer, and basically the gap would be widening. The transfer of wealth occur in many ways, and it does not have to be that they simply take away money from other people, but the outcome of the process is such that basically there are people who are not moving ahead and there are people who basically are extracting wealth. That's another reason why the rent seeking concept is very important, which I don't think I can elaborate on today, but if there is an interest, we can talk about it at another time. Does all IWM activities add value to society? Very interesting question. This is the way we need to understand it. As far as the real economy is concerned, most of the time, it does not add value to the society. And that's why the paper that I have recommended about the real economy, please read it, understand what real economy is all about, and I'm sure that you would see that where the Islamic wealth management activities come short in that regard. A trade-based transaction, this is something again, this is explained in that paper. Even when we talk about trade-based transaction, before trading, we have to have production. Most of the activities of Islamic finance industry is focused on trade, not developing our production base. And that's where one of the serious limitations is, because the real economy grows by increasing our production. Without increasing our production and consumption, if we simply trade what we have, we're not creating values, or not creating the values the way actually an expanding, growing economy would. So that's why trade-based is important. But before that, we need to have a better conceptualization of what real economy is all about. Just to give a hint.
Okay. Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
Prof, thank you, Brother Abdul Mateen. We have the last question from Mr. Abdullah Shirkar. I think he's from Bangladesh, yes. Is it feasible to establish a called the Hasana Bank with zakat money and cash awqaf money?
Is it feasible to establish a Hasana Bank with zakat money and cash awqaf money? As I have already mentioned, that this is something that relates to the area of fiqh, and I would not engage in that discussion here. What I would like to and our Sharia scholars and the people who deal with fiqh, I would draw their attention to, please don't tell me what I can and what I can't do. What we'd like to see, tell us how do we solve our problems from Islamic viewpoint. So take all the parameters, but solve the problems. Just don't tell me that I can't do or I can do this, but I don't care about whether there is a solution or not. We need to be problem solving oriented. So if there is a need in the society for Qad Hasan, and by the way, this is another area that again, I don't know how much we should be getting into, but Allah has prohibited riba. One of the principles in regard to all things that are made haram, Allah shows what is halal. Before showing something haram, declaring something haram, He shows what is halal. In this regard also, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made riba haram, He talks about buy halal. But if you look at the verses around, both before and after, it talks about both Qard Hasan, both Sadaqah, and so on. Now, as I said, that the fiqhi approach to this has certain parameters that constrain us in terms of solving problems. So, in addition to letting us know what we can and what we can't, I would like to see that we also have people who deal with fiqh and sharia, that how can we solve the problems. Don't tell me that, well, go and conquer the world, but with my hands are tied. So we need to be solution oriented. I firmly believe that Islam has the solutions, not only has the solutions, has the better solutions, but we need to be solution oriented and not just think in terms of in a very boxed thinking that this we can and this we can. Most of the things we can be flexible without being disloyal to Islam.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you, Mr. Abdullah Sarkar. And Brother Muhammad Saifullah Azad, thanks for nice and pragmatic discussion on Islamic wealth management. How to Islamize the process? This is a broader question, brother. But if you would like to add any comment, Doctor, Prof? How to Islamize the process of Islamic wealth management?
Why Islamic?
Yeah,
no, I don't see the question. Is it the question? Last question?
No, before that, Prof. Thanks for nice and pragmatic discussion on Islamic wealth management. How to Islamize the process?
How to Islamize the process of what?
Process of, I think, Islamic wealth management. Total system, this system, yeah.
Yes. Again, this presentation was based on a paper. And that paper actually has a lot more content than what we cover here. So what kind of things that we can do that actually will not only help us increase wealth if we have wealth, but also keeping in mind that Islam has certain parameters that must be achieved as part of that. So some ideas are presented in that paper. I invite you to read that paper, inshallah.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, for all these papers, except the book, I have given the links where you can freely download it from.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. We are ending the session today here. We would like to thank all the online guests, experts, lecturers and professors, students, my dear brothers and sisters, for joining us on behalf of our Islamic Economics Association of Kuwait University.
I just want to add the last word.
Yes, Prof.
If anything that you get it from this presentation, let's think win-win.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. So we thank you very much for joining us, and for your information, every Thursday we have English program. We specify the field and areas of Islamic banking and finance, economics in a broader way, and we invite worldwide scholars and prominent figures, experts. So you are welcome to join. And we do have everyday program in Arabic language. And especially on Sunday and Tuesday, we do have programs on skill. I mean, we do conduct a skill program in various fields and areas of research and studies. So you're welcome to join, and thank you very much. And we would like to thank our guest speaker, Dr. Mohammad Farooq, for your valuable time and for your effort for this wonderful session. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward you, and jazakumullah khairan. Barakallahu
Assalamu
fikum.
alaikum warahmatullah.
With that, we conclude the session here. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.